Hey everybody, my name is Ryan. I'm a pastor and I take questions from the internet and answer them as best I can. I got a question for you this week. It goes, what are the 5 points of Calvinism? All right, yeah, let's do 5 points of Calvinism. Let's get it out. It's an easy question. It's Tulip, T-U-L-I-P. And I should say, before we get started with this, these don't matter that much. Once you start diving deep into theology and engaging with the truths and the realities of God and how deep that well goes, you leave these 5 points behind. Like, memorizing these 5 points is ultimately not very important. But it is, they are like 5 easy to remember points that are some of the first ways that people start to think about doctrines and think about what's true and what's not true and what's a matter of opinion and what is a blood, pen, and a pencil doctrine. And so, to like think about these things and agree with and disagree with them actually is kind of a good exercise, and it's a good thing to get out of the way. For lack of a better word, like to kind of get this and be like, oh, okay, I'm not curious about that anymore. What else can I get curious about? Let's knock out 5 points of Calvinism real quick. So the T in Tulip stands for Total Depravity. Now I know I said that this isn't very important, but actually the T is super important. The reason why the T being in Tulip isn't important is because it's not actually a point of Calvinism. Like, the hardcore 5-point Calvinists are going to get mad at me for this, but like everybody believes T, right? The T was one of the 5 points of Remonstrance before the 5 points of Calvinism ever existed. The belief that we are totally depraved. And you need to believe that. No matter who you are, whether you're Calvinist or you're an Arminian, you need to believe T. It's important that you know that you are a sinner. And you're not just a sinner because you sin. You're not just a sinner because it slips your mind and you make mistakes sometimes. You sin because you're a sinner. That which is within you is not good, and it needs salvation. And it doesn't just need salvation to like escape, to get away from the wrath of God, but it needs salvation to cleanse what's wrong with you and what's wrong with all of us. And so nobody's better than anyone else. We're all just filthy rags before God. And so everybody believes that. Calvinists and Arminianists both believe that we are totally depraved, and you should too. The second point that kind of follows on that is the U, unconditional election. What unconditional election says is that God's reason for saving you, if God saves you, God's reason for saving you has nothing to do with you. There are no conditions for it. There's nothing that God needs from you in order to save you. He doesn't save you because you're prettier or better or more obedient, or because you think more of the right things, or because you are able to resist more temptations than anyone else. His election is unconditional. And in classic double predestination, which is Calvinism, if he damns you, it's the same reason. It's not because you deserve it more. Everybody deserves it. It's unconditional. It's for no reasons. There's nothing about you that makes it true or not true. So that's a hard pill to swallow for some, but arguably it stands right upon total depravity, right? Like, if you believe that there's nothing good about anyone, then the only way anyone can be elect is unconditionally. The L gets even worse. The L stands for limited atonement. That means that the atonement, the unification between us and God, our ability to be at one and in harmony with God, which was accomplished by Jesus on the cross, it happened for the elect. Jesus died. Jesus atoned only those people for whom Jesus died to atone, only for the elect. And so however many people are elect, and that number can be any number, those are the people that the atonement is for, and not anything that's not in that circle. Now, where this gets uncomfortable, I mean, there are plenty of verses that talk about, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. And if you believe in a kind of classic narrow is the gate mode of salvation, you would say, yeah, world, Jews and Gentiles, but the elect in the world. But a lot of people feel really uncomfortable thinking that Jesus isn't extending the offer to all of humanity by his atoning sacrifice. And this is the place where I just want to point out that limited atonement can be limited to the whole circle. The circle can be 100%, but then that leads us to a place where we would say, we would call that Christian universalism, right? It leads us to a place of toying with the possibility of an empty hell, that hell is real and people don't go there. And I would say Christian universalism is a very, very different doctrine than vague universalism, right? A vague universalism that says everybody's saved no matter what you believe, I don't go in for. But if you want to say everybody's saved and they're saved by Jesus eventually, then I can hear you. Then now I don't see biblical justification for that. I don't know where in the Bible you're gonna say this is true, but I also don't see anywhere in the Bible where I can say this isn't true. The closest I can get to that is the sheep and the goats in Matthew. But that's limited atonement. That whoever Jesus saves is who Jesus saves, and it's limited. It's only as many people as Jesus saves. The last, or second to last, is the I. The I in Tulip stands for Irresistible Grace. So this is the one that really cuts the Arminians or the Remonstrants off at the knees. Irresistible Grace says that if God chooses you, you get chosen. That the beauty of God is too great to resist. That once you are given grace, once you are given a taste of that holy nectar of goodness, you do not turn back again. It is irresistible. So one of the Arminian kind of answers to limited atonement, right, where they're going to say universal atonement. They're going to say everybody, Jesus died for the world, for everybody, and everyone is invited to the wedding feast of the Lamb. It's a really beautiful, really loving image of welcome. They're then going to go on to say, but not all of us accept the invitation. Once we are given the grace of God is cast like a net for everyone, and it's just up to us just to do the smallest action of grabbing onto it. Now, the Calvinist is going to say, we're not going to do that small action. God's got to send us the net, and he's got to put our hands on it. But if there's this alternate belief, if you don't believe in irresistible grace, then God can give you just enough grace. He can give you just enough of an invitation. He can give you just enough of a nudge, you sinner, to get you to respond, but not force you to respond. Just enough of a nudge to make it your option. And the Calvinist would say, well, no, there's no, God knows. God is sovereign. God has foreknowledge. And so there's no amount of a nudge that God's not going to know the result of that nudge. And if he nudges you just not quite far enough, then he knows that. And if he judges you just more than far enough and make sure that you accept, then you're going to accept that it's all in God's hands. So if God chooses to show you his grace, if God chooses to give you enough with which you can get to salvation or would get to salvation, then you will. And that flows absolutely finally into the last letter of Tulip, the P, which stands for perseverance of the saints. Once saved, always saved. That if you're elect, then you're elect. Then you're going to heaven. And if you're not elect, then you're not. There's no way to be elect and then lose your election. Now, there is plenty of way to be a church member and then lose your church membership, right? Or to be a church member and then leave and spend a life in rebellion against God, wherein we would suspect, it's not our place to judge, but we would suspect that you're not a part of the kingdom, you're not a part of salvation. But church membership is an election. So if your election is true election, if you really have tasted of that heavenly gift, then you've got it forever. You don't need to worry about, do I believe hard enough? Do I trust fully enough? Do I respond as one who responds in faith? You're just saved. And once you're saved, you're saved. And then we can respond not out of fear or out of hope that we'll be able to earn some kind of salvation thing, but just out of knowledge that we're saved and we're thankful, and we'd like to be on the winning team. We'd like to fight for the good guys and make the world a better place. And so we respond with that heart, a heart of hope and a heart of peace. I hope this answers your questions. If you liked this answer, I hope you'll share it. If you didn't like it, I hope you'll tell me why not. And if you've got your own question, I hope you'll ask it. You can look at these other questions that I've answered and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks.